I'm sitting here, in my car, outside the bank. And I can't stop shaking. Not from fear. From pure adrenaline. You see, 20 minutes ago, I just transferred every single penny from the joint account I shared with my father. All of it. Gone. Into my personal account. $68,000. My stepmother is probably, right now, standing at the ATM, watching her card get declined. Again. And again. And again. Let me back up. 3 hours ago, I was scrubbing vomit off my stepmother's designer shoes. Her friends had just left our house, after what she called her charity luncheon. You know, one of those events where rich women pretend to care about poor people, while spending more on wine than most families spend on groceries. But here's the thing. I wasn't invited to this luncheon. Even though, it was my house too. Even though, my father pays for everything. Even though I'm 26 years old, and supposedly part of this family. No. I was the help. Clean this up, she said, pointing at the mess her drunk friends had made in the kitchen. And do it quietly. We don't want to disturb the ladies. I looked around the room. Broken wine glasses. Food smeared on my grandmother's antique dining table. Red wine, soaked into the white carpet, that I had saved up for months to buy. And that's when I heard it. Laughter. Coming from the living room. Oh, Margaret, you're so lucky. One of her friends was saying. Having live-in help, and she works for free. More laughter. Well. My stepmother's voice, clear as day. When you marry a man with a pathetic daughter, you might as well put her to good use. I froze. 22 years. 22 years of this woman, treating me like garbage. 22 years of my father, choosing her over me. 22 years of being told to be grateful for the privilege of being treated like a servant in my own home. But today, something inside me just snapped. I quietly walked to my father's office. Opened his desk drawer. And there it was, the joint account information that he'd given me years ago. For emergencies. Well, this felt like an emergency. I picked up my phone. Opened the banking app. And with 3 simple transfers, I cleaned out everything. Every single penny. Now, I'm sitting here, watching my stepmother's world, about to come crashing down. And honestly, I've never felt more satisfied in my entire life. But let me tell you, how we got here. My mother died, when I was 4 years old. Cancer. Quick. Brutal. One day she was there, braiding my hair, reading me bedtime stories. The next, she was gone. My father, he tried his best. For about 2 years. We had our routines. Saturday morning pancakes. Disney movies on Sunday afternoons. He would brush my hair, even though he had no idea what he was doing, and I would end up looking like I'd been electrocuted. But he was trying. Then, Margaret showed up. She was everything my mother wasn't. Blonde. Skinny. High maintenance. She wore designer clothes to the grocery store, and complained about the quality of people at Target. My father, he was lonely. I get that now. But back then, all I knew was that this strange woman was suddenly in our house. Rearranging everything. Throwing away my mother's things. Making new rules. The first red flag. I was 6 years old. I had kept one of my mother's sweaters under my pillow. It still smelled like her perfume. Like home. Margaret found it. "Sweetie," she said, in that fake voice she used when my father was around. "We can't keep holding on to the past. Your mommy is gone, and she's not coming back." She took the sweater right out of my hands. I never saw it again. When I asked my father about it, he just said, "Margaret is right, honey. We need to move forward." Move forward. That became her favorite phrase. When I cried on my mother's birthday, we need to move forward. When I asked to visit my mother's grave, we need to move forward. When I begged to keep just one photo of my mother in the living room, we need to move forward. By the time I was 8, there was no trace of my mother left in that house. It was like she had never existed. But the real abuse, that started slowly. Little things at first. Margaret would forget to make me lunch for school. Or she'd do my laundry, with bleach, and then act shocked when my clothes were ruined. "Oh no," she'd say. "I'm so sorry. I'm still learning how to be a stepmom." My father always believed her. Then, when I turned 10, Margaret had her own daughter, Sophia. And suddenly, everything changed. Sophia got the bigger bedroom. The one that used to be mine. I got moved to the basement. "It's more private for a growing girl," Margaret explained. Sophia got dance lessons, piano lessons, art camp every summer. I got chores. "It's important for children to learn responsibility," Margaret would say, while Sophia sat on the couch, watching TV, as I scrubbed the kitchen floor. My father, he was working more. Traveling for business. And when he was home, Margaret made sure he only saw what she wanted him to see. The perfect family dinners, where I was told to smile and be grateful. The family photos, where I was always, somehow, cut out or standing in the back. The birthday parties, where Sophia got hundreds of dollars worth of presents, and I got a card. Let me tell you about my 13th birthday. The day I realized, my father had completely chosen his new family over me. I had been asking for months, for a small party. Nothing big. Just a few friends from school. Maybe pizza. Margaret said yes. She promised. The day of my birthday, I came home from school, expecting to see decorations. Friends. A cake. Instead, I found Margaret and Sophia, setting up for Sophia's friend's birthday party. The friend whose birthday was 3 days later. "Oh," Margaret said, when she saw me. "Didn't I tell you? We had to move your party." This was the only day that worked for everyone. My party never got rescheduled. But you know what the worst part was? My father came home, saw the decorations, and said, "Wow! Margaret, this looks amazing. You're such a good mother." He had forgotten. Completely forgotten, that it was my birthday. I spent that night, in the basement, crying, while upstairs Sophia's friends celebrated, with my birthday cake. That's when I learned, to stop expecting anything. From anyone. High school, was just more of the same. While Sophia got a car for her 16th birthday, I got a job. At McDonald's. To pay for my own gas money. While Sophia got college visits and SAT prep courses. I applied to state schools, using fee waivers, because my father claimed, we couldn't afford application fees. But somehow, we could afford Sophia's spring break trip to Europe. The day I graduated high school, valedictorian, with a full scholarship to State University, my father missed the ceremony. He was at Sophia's dance recital. Margaret's excuse? Well, she only graduates once. Apparently, so do I. College was my escape. For years, where I didn't have to pretend. Where I could just be myself. I studied business. Got internships. Made real friends, who actually cared about me. But every time I came home for holidays, it was like stepping back into a nightmare. Sophia had taken over my old room completely. My father barely acknowledged me. And Margaret, she had perfected the art of making me feel like a stranger in my own home. Let me know in the comments where you are watching this video from. I'd love to know if anyone else has dealt with a step-parent who made them feel invisible. But here's the thing. I graduated college. Got a good job. Started making my own money. And I thought, maybe things would change. Maybe, as an adult, I'd finally get some respect. I was so wrong. Because last month, my father got sick. Nothing serious. Just needed surgery for his appendix. But Margaret, she called me. For the first time in years. We need you to come home, she said. To help out. Just temporarily. Temporarily. Right. I took leave from my job. Moved back into that basement room. And started taking care of my father. But Margaret, she had other plans for me. Plans that, as of 3 hours ago, have backfired spectacularly. So there I was, back in my childhood home, taking care of my father after his surgery. And at first, I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be our chance to reconnect. You know? Father and daughter, finally getting some quality time together. But Margaret, she had different ideas. Day 1, she handed me a list. Typed. Laminated. Color-coded. Since you're staying here, she said, you might as well make yourself useful. I looked at the list. Grocery shopping. Meal prep. Laundry. Cleaning the bathrooms. Vacuuming. Dusting. Basically, everything a housekeeper would do. Margaret, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm here to help Dad recover. Not to be your maid. She smiled. That fake smile I'd seen 1,000 times. Oh sweetie, we're all family here. We all pitch in. I looked around. Sophia was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She was 24 now. Living at home. Unemployed. Spending her days, shopping online, with my father's credit cards. What about Sophia? I asked. Margaret's smile got tighter. Sophia has other responsibilities. Other responsibilities. Like what? Posting Instagram stories? But I bit my tongue. Because my father, he was upstairs, recovering. And I genuinely wanted to help him. So I did the chores. Made the meals. Drove to 3 different grocery stores, because Margaret only liked organic vegetables, from specific places. My father, when he was awake, he seemed grateful. He'd thank me for bringing him soup. For helping him to the bathroom. For sitting with him, while he watched the news. For the first time in years. I felt like his daughter again. But then, Margaret's friends started coming over. The charity luncheon ladies. The book club. The wine tasting group. And suddenly, I wasn't his daughter anymore. I was the help. Could you bring us more cheese? They'd ask, snapping their fingers at me. The wine glasses need refilling. Someone spilled something in the powder room. And Margaret, she'd just sit there, smiling, while I served her friends like a waitress. But today was different. Today was the big charity luncheon. The one Margaret had been planning for months. 12 women. All from the country club. All, according to Margaret. Very important people. She spent the entire morning, barking orders at me. The flowers need to be perfect. Use the good china. Make sure the silver is polished. And for God's sake, try to look presentable when you serve lunch. I had been up since 6 a.m. Cooking. Cleaning. Setting up. And when the women arrived, Margaret introduced me as our live-in helper. Not her stepdaughter. Not my father's daughter. The help. I served the lunch. Smiled politely. Pretended not to hear, when one woman asked Margaret, "How much do you pay her?" And Margaret's response, "Oh, she works for room and board. It's perfect, really. She doesn't have anywhere else to go. Doesn't have anywhere else to go. I have a college degree. A career. An apartment in the city, that I'm paying rent on, while I'm here, helping my family. But to Margaret, I'm just some pathetic charity case." The luncheon went on for hours. They drank wine. They laughed. They talked about their vacations, their children's accomplishments, their husbands' promotions. And I cleaned up after them. Like a servant. By 4 o'clock, they were drunk. Sloppy drunk. One woman, Mrs. Patterson, knocked over her wine glass. Red wine, all over the white carpet, that I had saved up for months to buy, as a housewarming gift, when my father and Margaret moved to this house. Oh no. Mrs. Patterson slurred. "I'm so sorry." She looked around, until her eyes landed on me. "Could you clean this up, dear?" Not a request. A command. I got on my hands and knees, with paper towels, trying to blot the stain. And that's when I heard Mrs. Patterson, talking to Margaret. "You're so lucky, having live-in help, and she works for free." Margaret laughed. That tinkling, fake laugh. Well, when you marry a man with a pathetic daughter, you might as well put her to good use. Pathetic daughter. I froze. Still on my hands and knees. Still cleaning up their mess. I mean, Margaret continued. She has nowhere else to go. No real job. No boyfriend. No life. So really, we're doing her a favor. The other women murmured in agreement. Such a generous heart you have, Margaret. Not everyone would take in someone like that. Someone like that. I stood up. Slowly. And looked at Margaret. She was smiling. Enjoying herself. Enjoying, humiliating me, in front of her friends. "Margaret," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Could I speak with you, in the kitchen?" Her smile faltered. "Just for a second." "Of course, dear." "Ladies, excuse me for just a moment." We walked to the kitchen. Margaret closed the door behind us. "What is it?" she asked, her fake sweetness, completely gone now. "I think," I said. "There's been a misunderstanding." She raised an eyebrow. I'm not your employee, I continued. I'm not your live-in help. I'm your stepdaughter. And I came here to help my father recover. Not to be humiliated in front of your friends. Margaret stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. Oh, sweetie, she said. Let's be realistic here. You're 26 years old. Living in our basement. Cleaning our house. What exactly would you call that? I'd call it helping family. Family? She stepped closer. Honey, you stopped being family the day you turned 18 and became a burden. A burden. You know what your problem is? Margaret continued. You think you're entitled to something. But you're not. Your father has moved on. He has a real family now. A wife who loves him. A daughter who makes him proud. She paused. You're just leftover baggage from his first marriage. And honestly, we've been too polite for too long. I stared at her. This woman, who had spent 22 years systematically erasing me from my father's life. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me? Get out of this kitchen. Go back to your friends. And pray that I don't tell them what you really think about family. Margaret's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. I smiled. For the first time in hours. Try me. She turned and walked out. Back to her luncheon. Back to her friends. And I walked to my father's office. I sat at his desk. Opened his laptop. And logged into the banking website. Joint account. My name. His name. Both of us, equal access. $68,000. Their vacation fund. Their emergency savings. Their everything. Before I tell you what I did next, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers, because what happens next, you're not going to believe. I transferred it all. Every penny. Into my personal account. And then I walked back to the living room, where Margaret was holding court with her drunk friends. Ladies, I said, interrupting their conversation. I have an announcement. Margaret looked at me. Her face, already turning pale. I just wanted to let you know. I continued. That I won't be cleaning up after today's luncheon. Confused murmurs from the group. In fact, I won't be cleaning anything ever again. Margaret stood up. Unsteady on her feet. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone. Showed her the banking app. The account balance. $0. I'm talking about. I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The fact that I just transferred every penny from the joint account that my father, stupidly, gave you access to. The room went silent. Margaret's face went from pale to white to gray. You can't. I can. And I did. I turned to her friends. By the way, ladies, just so you know. Margaret here doesn't actually have any money. Everything, the house, the cars, the credit cards, it all belongs to my father. Who, by the way, is upstairs, recovering from surgery, while his wife throws parties and calls his daughter pathetic. Mrs. Patterson, the woman who spilled the wine, looked mortified. Margaret, is this true? But Margaret, she couldn't speak. She was staring at my phone, at the zero balance, like she was seeing a ghost. "Oh," I said. "And one more thing." I walked to the kitchen, grabbed the laminated chore list that Margaret had made for me, walked back to the living room, and tore it into tiny pieces, right in front of everyone. Consider this my resignation. The silence in that room was deafening. 12 women, all staring. Some with wine glasses frozen halfway to their lips. Others just gaping like fish out of water. And Margaret. Margaret looked like she was going to faint. "You," she whispered. "You stole from us." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Stole?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "From a joint account, with my name on it?" "That's not how theft works, Margaret." Mrs. Patterson set down her wine glass very carefully. "Margaret," she said slowly, "what exactly is happening here?" Margaret's mouth opened and closed. No words coming out. So I helped her. "What's happening?" I said, turning to face all of her friends. "Is that Margaret has been lying to you about everything." I pulled out my phone again. Scrolled to the banking app. "See this account? The one that, until 20 minutes ago, had $68,000 in it?" The women leaned forward. "Curious now. This is my father's money. His savings. His vacation fund. His emergency money. Money that he, in a moment of trust, put into a joint account, with both our names on it." I paused. Let that sink in. "Because you see, ladies, my father thought I might need access, in case of emergencies. Like, if his wife ever decided to kick me out of my own home." Margaret finally found her voice. "That's not, you're twisting." "Am I?" I interrupted. "Let me ask you something, Margaret. Where did you think the money for this house came from?" She didn't answer. "The cars in the driveway? The credit cards you use for your shopping trips? The money for today's luncheon?" Still nothing. I turned back to her friends. "It all comes from my father. Margaret has never worked. Not a day, in her entire life. She contributes exactly nothing to this household." Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable. "Well, I'm sure she contributes in other ways." "Like what?" I asked. "Emotional support." Let me tell you about Margaret's emotional support. I walked to the mantel, where Margaret kept all the family photos. Photos of her and my father. Photos of Sophia. Photos of family vacations that I was never invited to. "Do you see anything missing in these photos?" I asked the room. The women looked around, confused. "I'll give you a hint. My father has 2 daughters. But Margaret only displays photos of one." I pulled out my phone. Scrolled to my graduation photo. The one where I was valedictorian. This is me, graduating college. Top of my class. Full scholarship. I showed them the photo. Want to guess who didn't show up to my graduation ceremony? The room was getting very uncomfortable now. "Margaret." Mrs. Patterson said quietly. "Maybe we should." "No," I said firmly. "Let's not go anywhere. Because I'm not done." I turned back to Margaret. Tell them about my 13th birthday. Margaret's face went even paler. Tell them how you promised me a party, and then gave it to Sophia's friend instead. That's not. Tell them how you threw away my mother's belongings while my father was at work. Margaret's hands started shaking. Tell them how you moved me to the basement so your daughter could have the bigger room. Stop. Margaret whispered. But I was just getting started. Tell them about the chore list. The one where you assigned me every household task, while your daughter sat on the couch, doing nothing. I walked closer to Margaret. Tell them how you introduced me today. Not as your stepdaughter. Not as your husband's daughter. But as the help. The women were looking at Margaret now. Really looking at her. And they didn't like what they were seeing. Tell them. I continued. What you said 10 minutes ago, in this very room. Margaret shook her head. Tell them how you called me your husband's pathetic daughter. Mrs. Patterson gasped. Margaret, you didn't. Tell them. I said, my voice getting louder. How you said. I have nowhere else to go. No real job. No life. The room was completely silent now. Tell them how you said, you're doing me a favor by letting me live here. I pulled out my phone again. This time. I opened my work email. Want to know what my real job is? I asked the room. I showed them my email signature. Senior Financial Analyst. Morrison and Associates. Salary, $95,000 a year. The women stared at the phone. I have my own apartment. My own car. My own life. I came here to help my father recover from surgery. Because I love him. I looked directly at Margaret. But apparently, that makes me pathetic. Mrs. Patterson stood up. Margaret. I think we should go. Yes, said another woman. This feels very private. But Margaret, she was panicking now. Wait. She said, grabbing Mrs. Patterson's arm. You don't understand, she's being dramatic. Dramatic? I said. Ladies, would you like to see what dramatic looks like? I walked to the kitchen. Came back with the wine-stained paper towels. This is what I was doing when Margaret called me pathetic. I was on my hands and knees, cleaning up after you. I dropped the towels on Margaret's white couch. Because that's what the help is supposed to do. Right, Margaret? Margaret's friends were already gathering their purses. Margaret. Mrs. Patterson said carefully. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said. Margaret has been very clear about what she thinks of me. And now, I'm being very clear about what I think of her. I walked to the front door. Opened it wide. Ladies, thank you for coming. But I'm afraid the luncheon is over. They filed out. Quickly. Quietly. Like they couldn't get away fast enough. Mrs. Patterson, the last to leave, turned back to Margaret. Margaret, you might want to think about what kind of person you want to be. And then, she was gone. Margaret and I stood in the living room. Alone. The house suddenly felt very quiet. You. Margaret said, her voice shaking. You just ruined everything. No, I said calmly. You ruined everything. 22 years ago. I just finished it. She stared at me. Tears starting to form in her eyes. Your father is going to be furious. My father, I said, is going to hear every single word of what you said today. And then, he's going to understand why his money is no longer in your reach. Margaret's phone started buzzing. Text messages. Probably from her friends. But I wasn't done yet. Oh, and Margaret. One more thing. I walked to the kitchen. Grabbed the list of emergency contacts that my father kept on the refrigerator. I'm going to call each of these people. His brother. His best friend. His business partner. Margaret's eyes went wide. And I'm going to tell them exactly what kind of woman they've been pretending to like for the past 20 years. Her phone kept buzzing. More messages. More damage control that she'd never be able to manage. You can't. She whispered. I can. And I will. I headed toward the stairs. To check on my father. Because you see, Margaret, you made one critical mistake. I turned back to look at her. Standing there. In her designer dress. Surrounded by the wreckage of her perfect luncheon. You forgot that pathetic daughters can become very dangerous women. And then I walked upstairs to tell my father exactly what kind of woman he had married. I found my father sitting up in bed, looking confused. What's all the noise downstairs? He asked. Did Margaret's luncheon end early? I sat down in the chair next to his bed. The same chair where I'd been sitting for weeks, bringing him soup, helping him with his medication, being his daughter. Dad, I said carefully. We need to talk. Something in my voice made him look at me. Really look at me. What's wrong? I took a deep breath. Margaret called me your pathetic daughter in front of 12 women today. His face went blank. She said, I have nowhere else to go. No real job. No life. She said, you've moved on to your real family, and that I'm just leftover baggage from your first marriage. My father said nothing. But I could see something changing in his eyes. Dad, I continued. I transferred the money. All of it. From our joint account. Now he looked shocked. You, what? $68,000. I moved it to my personal account. Because Margaret has been treating me like hired help, while spending your money like it's hers. I pulled out my phone. Showed him the banking app. She introduced me to her friends as your live-in helper. Not your daughter. The help. My father stared at the phone screen. At the zero balance. I don't understand. Dad, when was the last time you and I had a conversation without Margaret in the room? He thought about it. For a long time. When was the last time you asked me about my job? My life? My dreams? More silence. When was the last time you told Margaret that I'm your daughter, and she needs to treat me with respect? My father looked down at his hands. She said you were dramatic. That you caused problems. That it was easier when you weren't around. And you believed her. It wasn't a question. Dad. I'm 26 years old. I make $95,000 a year. I have my own apartment. My own car. My own life. I stood up. I came here, because you were sick, and I love you. But I'm not your pathetic daughter. And I'm not Margaret's maid. My father looked up at me. And for the first time, in years, I saw recognition in his eyes. What have I done? He whispered. Before I could answer, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Margaret, finally coming up to do damage control. She burst into the room. Honey, she said to my father. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. My father looked at her. Then at me. Then back at her. Margaret, did you call my daughter pathetic? Margaret's mouth opened and closed. Well, she was being. Yes or no? It wasn't like that. Yes. Or no. Margaret realized she was trapped. She was embarrassing us, in front of my friends. By existing? I asked. My father's expression got very cold. Margaret, get out. What? Get out of this room. Now. Margaret looked shocked. But honey. Now. She left. Quickly. My father and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. I failed you. I didn't deny it. I chose her over you. Again and again. I let her erase your mother's memory. I let her push you out of our family. Yes, I said quietly. You did. I don't know how to fix this. I looked at him. This man, who used to make me pancakes on Saturday mornings. Who used to brush my hair, even when he had no idea what he was doing. You can start by not letting her control our relationship anymore. He nodded. And the money? The money stays where it is. Until you decide what kind of family you actually want to have. Over the next 3 days, everything fell apart. For Margaret. Her friends started avoiding her calls. Word had spread about the luncheon disaster and Margaret's true feelings about family. The country club, where she spent most of her time, suddenly felt very unwelcoming. But the real consequences started on day 4. My father called his lawyer. I want to change my will, he said. And I want to set up a separate account for my daughter. One that Margaret cannot access. Margaret, when she found out, had a complete meltdown. You can't do this to me, she screamed. I've given you the best years of my life. You've given me 22 years of watching you systematically destroy my relationship with my daughter. The lawyer visits continued for weeks. Trust fund. Set up in my name. With Margaret specifically excluded. College fund. For my future children. Again. Margaret excluded. Life insurance. Beneficiary changed. From Margaret to me. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came 3 weeks later. I was sitting in my father's office, helping him organize his finances, when Margaret's phone started ringing. Unknown number. She answered. Put it on speaker, without thinking. Hello, is this Margaret Thompson? Yes. This is Jennifer Martinez, from Westfield Country Club. I'm calling to inform you that your membership has been terminated. Silence. I'm sorry, what? Several members have expressed concerns about recent behavioral issues. The board has voted to revoke your membership, effective immediately. Margaret looked like she'd been slapped. You can't. I've been a member for 15 years. Yes, ma'am. Your final statement will be mailed to you. Have a good day. Click. Margaret stared at the phone. They can't do this. My father looked up from his paperwork. They can. And they did. The text messages started the next day. From Margaret's so-called friends. I was helping my father with his physical therapy when Margaret's phone started buzzing non-stop. Aren't you going to answer that? I asked. Margaret glanced at the phone. Read the first message. Her face went white. What is it? My father asked. Margaret didn't answer. So I walked over. Picked up her phone. Margaret, this is Susan. I think it's best if you don't come to book club anymore. Several members feel uncomfortable. I read it out loud. My father stopped his exercises. Keep going, he said. I scrolled to the next message. Margaret, this is Patricia. I've decided to find a different tennis partner. I think some space would be good for both of us. And another one. Margaret, this is Jennifer. I won't be able to make lunch tomorrow. Or any day in the foreseeable future. Message after message. Friend after friend. All cutting ties. Margaret's entire social circle, her whole identity, disappearing, one text at a time. How does it feel? I asked her. She looked at me. Tears in her eyes. How does it feel to be rejected? To be excluded? To be treated like you don't matter? Margaret started crying. Real tears. Not the fake ones she used to manipulate my father. I'm sorry, she whispered. Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught? She didn't answer. Because we all knew the truth. Margaret wasn't sorry for what she'd done to me. She was sorry that her actions finally had consequences. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 months later, my father made a decision that surprised everyone. Including me. He filed for divorce. I can't live, he told me. With someone who could treat my daughter the way she treated you. For 22 years. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday. Margaret tried everything. Tears. Threats. Promises to change. But my father had finally seen who she really was. And he chose his daughter. He chose me. Margaret moved out 2 weeks later. Back to her sister's house. The same sister who'd warned her, years ago, that treating stepchildren badly always backfires eventually. Sophia, my stepsister, moved out too. She couldn't afford to live on her own without my father's financial support. Turns out, when you're 24, with no job skills and no work ethic, life gets very difficult very quickly. The house suddenly felt peaceful. My father and I started having real conversations again. About my mother. About my childhood. About all the years we lost because he was too afraid to stand up to Margaret. We'll never get those years back. But we have, right now. And that's something. The money. The $68,000 that I transferred. I gave half of it back. Because it wasn't really about the money. It was about respect. About being seen. About being valued as a human being instead of free labor. My father used his half to take me on a trip. Just the two of us. To Ireland, where my mother's family originally came from. It was the first vacation we'd taken together since I was 6 years old. And Margaret? Last I heard, she's working retail. At a department store. For the first time in her life, earning her own money. Sophia moved across the country. She sends my father occasional texts asking for money. He stopped responding. As for me, I moved back to my apartment. Back to my job. Back to my life. But now, I have something I didn't have before. I have my father back. And that makes everything worth it.